Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new series on this channel where we will be playing some Manor Lords. Everyone's playing this game, I'm sure you already know about it. It's a game that's still in early development, so there's still a lot of work to be done, but we can still have an enjoyable experience. So let's start a new game and complete it in its current stage. Now when starting a new game you get faced with this screen. This is where you customize your appearance, so you can select your profile picture. This is how you will look in game. You can change your name, and then finally you can change your coat of arms, and there's quite a few ways you can customize your appearance here. Additionally, you can also load a custom texture to the game and apply it to your coat of arms. Let me just try to come up with something real quick. Okay, so I have this white dove on top of a pink background. I call myself Dove and I'm gonna be this turban guy. Now when selecting the game setup you have three different options. You have restoring the peace. This is the default game mode for this game, which basically consists in conquering every single area within the region, and this is the one that we'll be playing. Then you have the rise to prosperity, which is more like a sandbox mode where you can develop your city or your town without having to worry about combat. I'm supposing this is good for people who want to learn how to play the game and explore the mechanics. And then finally we have On the Edge, which is kind of a challenge mode for this game, which basically consists in surviving all the raids and attacks that your city will face. This is something that I haven't tried yet. And by selecting different modes you can kind of see how the options change. You can also customize it as you see fit, but for the purpose of this game I'm going to choose Restoring the Peace. There's only one map at the moment, and that's enough for us to start. Let's go! Okay, so upon starting your game you get faced with a new message. Let's read it. This is just an introductory message reminding you of the objective of the game. This is where you start your match with this very basic encampment. You get reminded of the most important resources of the game, which is food and fuel. You absolutely need to plan ahead and think about these things so your citizens can survive. Now the first thing that I want to do is actually pause the game and take a look at the region we're in. You can see that very close to our encampment we have this icon, which is a berry deposit. This is going to be a very suitable source of food. There are two different food sources that every single region has. One of them is berries, which we have already covered, and also white animals. Now you can see that this one is a rich deposit. This means there's a lot more animals in this area than regular wild animals deposits, and they also reproduce faster. So if we take a look here, 38 out of 40, and in a normal region 20 out of 20 for example, and this is a global map and we will get there eventually. We also have a clay deposit, stone deposits, and also iron deposits. Now if I zoom out I can get a grasp of the entire region. So there's three different players in this type of mode in Manor Lords. There's you, the player, and your area or your territory is this red area that you see here. So we just happen to spawn right in the middle of the map. Then there's this guy, Hildebold, which is your opponent. This is the guy you're competing against to rule the entire map. His claimed regions are the ones in yellow, so these top regions right here. And then there are the outlaws. These are just the bandits that inhabit this entire region, and they will attack you from time to time, but we'll get there eventually. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this guy, your opponent, unlike you, is not setting a city in any of these maps. He has his own kingdom far away from the region, and he will occasionally send his explorers or conquerors to claim these unclaimed regions, which are the ones in grey. So you will occasionally see his armies going around the map and claiming these different regions. You're also at a disadvantage because his armies are much bigger than your own army, so you cannot fight him at this stage. So basically you will have to grow your city and start claiming these gray unclaimed territories. As you get the resources for it, we'll touch on that later on. And then when the map is fully claimed, you will have to start fighting Hildebolt for his own territories and defeat him in battle for that. As I mentioned, food and fuel are the most important resources, so let's start addressing those right away. We have a berry deposit conveniently close to our encampment, so let's start by building a road connecting there. And roads are free and you can build them very generously, and they also build instantly. Now that we've got our road leading here, we can place our forager hut. Now if I unpause the game, you can already see your peasants or your citizens going there to build it. While your citizens are building your forager hut, we can now start thinking about fuel, which requires a lot of wood. So the next thing that we gotta build is this thing, the logging camp. So I'm gonna take the road tool and make another pathway all the way here. And this is where we're gonna place our logging camp. Once built, your citizens assigned to it will then start chopping the trees around it for lumber. Now, one important note about berries is that they are seasonal, meaning they are only available in certain months of the year. So at the moment you see this little warning, it says they're growing because we are in March, and they will eventually stop producing in the autumn and winter. So it's a good idea to take advantage of this while they're available. And in order to do so, you just have to click your forager hut and then assign someone to it who will automatically start collecting this. When you have a family assigned to a building, you can go to this tab, the people tab, and it will let you know where its workers are. And at the moment we can see that we have 2 foragers and they're both getting a basket. It seems that we've also received a new message. And guess who it is? It's our rival, Hildebolt. This is him just giving an excuse as to why he wants to conquer the land. So not really relevant. You can write back to him and say that he has no rightful claim to Selbitz and Hofstetten. These are the regions that he has already claimed on the map. You can also do other things such as requesting for funds or even declaring war, even though this costs some resources, as you can see. You can also choose not to say anything, but I'm gonna choose to defy him and say that he has no rightful claim over these lands, even though I don't think this does anything and still needs development work here. It seems that our logging camp is also fully built, so we're gonna assign a family to it. You can assign more families to this building, up to a maximum of 3, but it's important not to go overboard with this, because you will need some unassigned workers to build your buildings. If you look at the top left corner of the screen, you see the total of families that are unassigned and the number of families that are assigned, so we have a total of 5 families, 2 of them are assigned. That's our forager hut and our logging camp families. Whenever you want to build more buildings, only the unassigned families will work on those. So you need to have this number above 0 whenever you want to build something. This tab over here also gives you an indication of how long your food and fuel last, which can give you an indication of how urgent the production of these things are. So you can see food will last us for 5 more months, so we're basically set on that, and fuel, we're still not making any consumption. This will go up as we start to build the first houses. And speaking of houses, that's something that we need to start building because we have a total of 5 homeless families who are at the moment residing at these tents. It's even called homeless people's tents. So we need to start focusing on that as soon as we can. It's at this stage that we need to start thinking about the layout of the city and the shape that we want it to take. If we zoom out a little bit, we can see that we have this huge area surrounded by a couple of roads. So very good and easy access, and this could potentially be a good area to build a city. I want to build relatively close to my food sources. That means taking into account the location of our berry deposit, and also I want to start extending towards the wild animals deposit, because this will be a very good and viable source of food. So that's something that we can start doing right now, and perhaps we can start by placing some roads. I think I want to connect our existing road to the two main regional roads. So let's start by doing something organic. Something like this. Now let's do the same towards the other side. I'm staying away from straight lines because this is a medieval town, so there were no grids back then. So I'm trying to keep it somewhat realistic. Now this road over here seems like a good location for us to build our first houses. We need a total of 5 houses to eliminate the homelessness of the city. And each house costs a total of 2 logs to build, so in total we need 10 logs to build 5 houses. If we look at the top section of the screen, we can see that we have 11, so we have just enough to build this. Building your houses is relatively simple. You just click to define your points or your area, your house area. Zoning automatically adjusts to the roads, which is a very nice touch. After defining your 4 points, you can then click this button to rotate the orientation of your plots. You can reduce the number of plots or increase it consequentially. This area represented with this icon represents where the houses will be built. This area, usually at the back of the houses, represents the extensions that are possible to build. So we're talking about vegetable camps or chicken coops, or even create a blacksmith store, for example. And this little icon represents house extensions. And it will make it possible for you to upgrade your house, to add annex to it, so that an additional family can join the same house. After that's done, you can click on this point and it will eventually start building. Now, one important thing about construction that I haven't mentioned yet is that there are 2 different stages to building a particular building. There's the actual building part, where you need unassigned citizens. They're the ones who will actually do the building and stuff. But before that, there's a previous step that must be met, which is the transport of goods. So this particular house, for example, requires the transportation of 2 logs, and this can only be done by an animal. In this case, by an ox. And we can see if we zoom in that we already have an ox transporting the timber here. One of the problems that I had in my first city was that I did not have enough animals, so I did not have enough oxes. And despite having a lot of unassigned families and a very generous workforce, my buildings were not being built because there was only 1 ox. And thus materials were not getting transported to their respective building places, and it took me a while to figure that one out. This icon over here tells you how much livestock you have available. At the moment we have 1 oxen, and you can hire more oxen by clicking on your hitching post that should come whenever you start a new city, and clicking this button to order another one. This costs money, however, which is a very valuable resource, so we're not going to do that until later on. Here you can see the perfect example of that. People are only building the houses whenever the construction materials are already there, in this case the timber. And whenever there's not enough timber, they just stand there doing nothing. Now we can also already see that our forager hut is completely full. It has no more room for berries, so I think it's a good time for us to start worrying about storage. Or in this case, a granary, that's the official name of the building. I think I'm gonna build it right here, right next to the forager hut. And that should help the storage of these particular goods. Whenever you build your first houses, you will start consuming fuel. So we need to start increasing our fuel production. And that's done with this particular building, the Woodcutter's Lodge, which works very similarly to the logging camp, as in workers will chop the nearby trees to produce firewood. I would recommend building it at a different location than your logging camp, so that they're not using the same resources. One thing that I found was that the logging camp would chop wood at a much higher rate than the Woodcutter's Lodge, and then there weren't enough trees for the woodcutter's lodge to work properly. We only have 1 month of fuel available, so we are gonna increase the priority of our woodcutter's lodge so that the ox prioritizes this building first and rushes the delivery of the timber. Okay, so the woodcutter's lodge is finally built. Now we're gonna assign someone to it. Actually, we're gonna assign 2 families so that the production of firewood is much quicker. And we can already see the people arriving at the woodcutter's lodge to produce some firewood. Now, while we're waiting for that, there's another thing that we can start talking about, which is the marketplace. All the resource producing facilities, namely the forager hut and the woodcutter's lodge, which provide berries and firewood respectively, need a market to sell their goods to the population. That is done on a marketplace. And you can actually see these warnings that tell you exactly that. For example, the woodcutter's lodge needs more market area to create a stall to be able to provide firewood to the city. Now there's a certain area of effect for the marketplace, as in houses that are closer to the marketplace get the resources delivered to them more effectively than houses further away from the marketplace. So it's a good idea to make your marketplace a central location and build your city around it. And I'm thinking this intersection here is going to be perfect for that, as we can build houses alongside this road, and also this road as well. So this can kind of be the central location of our city. So something like this. I think I want to make the marketplace layout a bit more interesting, so I think I'm going to draw a road here and end it at about here. Now if you hold the control button and then use the mouse click, you can adjust the angle of the curvature for the road. I think this is a good enough road. So let's build it. And let's delete this road by clicking and holding the Alt button and left clicking on this road. And it will delete it. Now it also seems that it deleted more than it should. So let's just rebuild it. Okay, and now we can build our marketplace here. Okay, so now the marketplace is defined and people should now start moving in their stalls. And it also seems that the firewood stall and also the food stall are already under construction. So this is a relatively quick process. And speaking of firewood, our fuel source is now available for 7 more months. So our citizens have been busy producing that. Because we're not at such an emergency when it comes to firewood, we can go into the woodcutter's lodge and decrease the number of families here. Let's talk about growth and upgrading buildings. These 5 houses, as you can see, are level 1 burgage plots. There are a total of 3 different levels for houses, and upgrading your current houses to higher level houses is part of your milestones and how you grow and progress in this game. If I hover on the name of the city, you can see that there's a requirement that's not being met, which is having at least 2 houses or 2 burgage plots that are level 2 or higher. In order to upgrade your houses to higher level houses, you need to fulfill a set of requirements. To upgrade a level 1 house to a level 2 house, these need water access, a church, a fuel style supply, which is already being built as we have seen, a food style supply with 2 different types of food. This is something that we need to work on, and also a clothing stall supply. Now that we have a small village established, these are the things that we need to start focusing on. Water access is actually relatively straightforward. You have this thing, a well, and you just need to build it near a water source. And I think I'm gonna build a well right about over here at a very central location, right next to the marketplace. Now for the church, this thing actually has a cost of 20 planks, which is a resource that we do not have. As you can see, we have 0 planks. And in order to start having some planks, we need to build this thing, a saw pit. which transforms the timber into planks. Now I'm going to build this relatively close to our logging camp, so right here. And whenever built, we can assign a family to it so it can start producing planks. So the church is going to take a little while to build because of that. Now, as for the other requirements, the fuel stall is already supplied. The food stall is already supplied with one type of food, which is berries, and that's something that you can see if you click on your marketplace and click over here on the food variety. You can see which houses are supplied with food and which type of food. In this case, we have 2 houses supplied with berries. You can do the same with fuel and also clothing. In order to upgrade the houses, we need, however, a second source of food. And there's quite a few ways of doing this. One of those is by upgrading the house with an extension unit. So you can build a vegetable garden to produce vegetables or a chicken coop to produce eggs. This, however, has a cost of silver to build. And we only have 50 silver at the moment, so I think I want to save my money for the time being. Another option is to make use of the wild animal deposits that we have here. And that's something that I'm going to do because this is a rich deposit. Even though it's very far away from our city, I think it's a good idea to start making use of this resource. So I'm going to build a road leading there. And I want to make the pathway as direct as possible, but not be a completely straight line. So one road over here, now we can continue it all the way here. Now we can start building our hunting camp. And you do not want to build it inside its radius because that will cause the animals to flee, but you can build it right on the edge of it, which is what I'm gonna do. I am gonna prioritize the saw pit, however, because I want to start building timber as fast as possible. Okay, now that's done, we can assign a family to it, and we should start having some timber, or some planks. Okay. And our hunting camp is also built, so let's also assign a family to it and see if we can have that second source of food. We are working on the church, we are also working on the second source of food. Now we need to start thinking about the clothing. Level 1 families require a supply of linen, leather, or yarn. Each of these resources require different materials to produce. The one that we can focus on and start producing right away is actually the second one, leather. Leather can be produced at the tannery, which requires hides to produce. Hides can be obtained in the hunting camp, as wild animals will provide you not only with meat, but also hides. So we are going to build a tannery right about, I'm thinking over here, right next to the hunting camp. Now we need to have a family to work this because we have all of our families assigned to something. So I think we can start assigning some. So for example, we have enough fuel for 8 months, so I don't think we need this guy over here. Food is more than enough for 12 months, so I suppose we could assign this family as well. But we are in the peak of harvesting season for the berries, so I think I'm going to keep it. So we're going to depend on this single unassigned family to build our tannery. Notice how the ox is avoiding the road and is using a shortcut. This probably means that there could be a more effective and efficient path. So let's create an additional road leading to our logging camp. So super organic, not rigorous at all, but that's expected for a medieval village. Notice how he is using the new road now. Okay, so now the tannery is complete, and we can assign a family to it so we can start producing the leather. And here you can see the tannery workers going into the hunting camp collecting the hides, bring it back to the tannery to produce the leather, and then take it back to the town and sell it at the marketplace. Now you can see that this house over here already has different sources of food and a clothing supply setup as well, but it lost its fuel supply because we have removed the family working at the woodcutter's lodge, and now the firewood stall is abandoned. So this is a management game, so there's a bit of micromanagement that we need to do. In order to fix this, I'm gonna reassign someone to this particular area, but I have no available families. So let me take a look at our available resources, and I can see that we have 33 timber and 35 planks. So one of the things that I'm gonna do is take away the family working at the logging camp temporarily, as well as on the saw pit, because we have plenty of timber already. The berry deposits is already out of season, so we do not need a forager here. We're gonna remove it as well. Actually, I'm gonna keep one family at the forager hut so that we don't have the same problem that we had on the woodcutter's lodge. In other words, so that the food stall for berries on the marketplace does not get abandoned. But we finally have enough resources to build a church. And I like to build them at an elevated place, like on a hill or something. I think that looks particularly nice and realistic. We have a little hill over here, which is not very noticeable. And we also have another one at about this location. I think this would be a great place for a church. So let's build it right here, right next to the stone deposit. And I think I'm gonna prepare the layout with a small road for it. I think we can extend this road going alongside the forest here. So let's build it right here, I suppose. Okay, and let's add a second road leading to it. So something like this, making a direct connection to the main road. One thing that I forgot to mention is that not all resources are transported by the ox. Oxes only transport the timber, which is the heaviest resource. The planks and the rocks can be transported by the villagers, as you can see. Okay, here you go. Our church is now finally built. With the addition of the church, we now have a positive approval rating. Whenever you start the game, this approval rating sits at 50%. Higher approval ratings means that there are more people willing to move into the city. If we hover the population tab, we can see that it's saying that there's no population growth because all of the houses are occupied. So I think now it's a good time for us to start building more houses to boost our population. I'm gonna build the next set of houses right in front of the marketplace. So something like this. I think this is a interesting layout or interesting shape. One additional house is built, and with that you can see that we now have a low population growth. So we shouldn't wait long until we have a new family joining the city. And it seems that we finally have a house ready to be upgraded, as its requirements are already met. So let's do that, and it has a total cost of 4 lumber. And look at that, a new family moving in. That's gonna be valuable additional workforce. With this new additional workforce, we can add another family back to the logging camp so that our log production does not end. We are now sitting at 17 timber, so we need to prepare our wood reserves. This new house is now ready to be upgraded to level 2, so let's do that, and that should get us to the next milestone. We are having a lot of these messages of stocks damaged by weather. In this case, we're talking about the woodcutter's lodge. And I think that's our cue to build a proper storage system for these resources, which is basically this thing, the storehouse. It's different than the granary, which only supports food. The storehouse allows you to store a bunch of other different materials, such as rocks, timber, planks, weapons, tools, anything that isn't food basically. I think I'm gonna build it here. I think this is central enough. Whenever you build your first storage room, you get this message. This is a military message, and the game teaches you about creating a militia. So if you click on create militia, you can go on your army tab, click on the plus icon, and then create your first militia. Now, conveniently, the game also provides you with 20 spears and 20 large shields, which are the exact resources you need to create a spear militia. If you click on your storehouse, you can see that those resources are delivered there directly. Now you can create different types of militia. You have the militia footmen, which require axes and small shields, the spear militia, which requires spears and large shields, the pole arm militia, which requires pole arms, and the archer militia, which requires warbows. Now, as I've mentioned, the game conveniently gives you 20 spears and 20 large shields, so you can create a spear militia right away. If you instead choose to create other types of militias, that is possible, but you will have to produce the weapons for that particular militia first, which consumes a lot of iron and also a lot of wood in the case of warbows and archers. So let's just create a spear militia instead. The game gives you a quick tutorial, basically saying what I've said, and after the militia is created, you kind of see these numbers on the bottom. It says 12 out of 36. 12 is the number of soldiers that we currently have, and 36 is the highest amount of soldiers a militia can have. Now, even though we have 20 spears and 20 large shields, we only have 12 capable soldiers, so we need to increase our population, and the number of soldiers in this militia will automatically adjust. We can also create an additional militia, like a spear militia, and the number of soldiers is halved. This is particularly useful if you want to create two different units with different purposes, but we'll touch on that later on. At the moment, I only want to have one militia, so I'm going to remove this unit, and this one will go back to having 12 soldiers. Now, we already have 20 spears and 20 large shields, which is more than enough for you to survive your first bandit raid. But in order to increase the size of this militia, we need to add more residents to the city. And that will happen eventually as we play. Okay, so now we have two level 2 buildings. And we have reached the next milestone. We are now a medium-sized village. And in order to get to the large village, the next settlement level, or the next milestone, we need 5 of these. Now, about level 2 buildings, first and foremost, you can see that they look a bit different than level 1 building. So this is a level 2, and this is a level 1. This one looks more robust and more modern. Actually has a decent roof, and it's not a straw and clay roof, as you can see. Also, something very important about level 2 buildings is that they start generating some income. If you hover the upgrade icon, you can see that level 2 houses will generate 1 silver per month. Additionally, if I click on a level 2 burgage plot, and if I want to upgrade it to level 3, I can see that level 3 plots generate 2 silver per month. So having a town with a lot of upgraded buildings can be a very, very sustainable source of silver in the medium to late game. There are other sustainable sources of silver, namely trading, but we'll get onto that later on. At this stage, you can see a number right next to your village name. It's the number 2. So if I click on it, that opens the development view. You get a quick introduction, so a small tutorial. But basically, for each development that you have in your city, that equals 1 development point, and you can use it to specialize your city in different ways. There are a lot of icons that are still work in progress, and they're locked for early access. But for the ones that we have, you can specialize your city in resource gathering. So you have skills such as trapping, that gives you an income of meat, or this one, the forest management, which doubles the capacity of all the berry deposits. Beekeeping allows you to start producing honey, so stuff like that. You can also specialize in farming. So sheep breeding allows you to breed sheep if you happen to have a pasture with them. Heavy plow is useful if you have a lot of farms in your city, as it will allow you to have animals doing the plowing on your farms instead of that work being done by humans. The one in the bottom focuses on mining and also military. So this one, for example, allows you to turn one firewood in charcoal if you unlock it. And this one, deep mining, is a very useful upgrade. So if you happen to have rich deposits of iron or clay in your region, if you have this unlocked, you can upgrade those mines to deep mines, allowing you to extract unlimited resources out of those mines. This branch is a military branch, allowing you to create helmets and mail and also heavy mail. And this one over here specializes in trading, which in my view is the most overpowered and useful branch that you can specialize to at this stage in the game. Trade, logistics, and also better deals will allow you to import pretty much most of the things your city needs at very low prices, and in my view it's one of the most viable ways of growing a city in the long term. But we'll focus on that later on. At the moment we have 2 development points we can use, but I'm not going to use them for the time being. I'm going to save them for the future. If you click on the right side, that will lead you to the policies tab, but you need a manor to unlock those. So at the moment we have 0 out of 0, so we'll focus on that later on. At the moment I think I want to focus on developing the city a bit more, build a few more houses, upgrading the ones that we currently have. So for example we have 2 additional houses that can be upgraded to level 2, and perhaps I can also build a couple more houses to increase the population of the city and increase the size of our militia as well, and eventually create a militia of 20 units. Eventually in your playthrough you will receive this particular message. This message is about the first rate that you are going to experience in the game. Now you can either select this option, track their movement, and you'll have 365 days to prepare for the attack, or you can choose the second option. As to my knowledge, this option doesn't do anything. You are still going to get attacked, but differently from the first option, you don't get a counter. So I don't think there's a particularly good reason to choose this one. So instead, you can select the first one. And the warning appears in the bottom left corner of the screen. So this is the amount of time that you have to build your militia and defend against the invaders. For this first raid, there's nothing in particular that you should be doing. The most important thing that you should do is raise your population up to the point where you have a high number of soldiers to fight. A spear militia is the most effective option because you already have the weapons, you are given the weapons by the game. If you raise your population enough, you will eventually be able to have a militia of 20 soldiers for free, because that's the amount of weapons that the game gives you. And a spear militia of 20 soldiers is more than enough to defend against this very first raid. So that's pretty much what we need to focus on. I already have these new plots ready to be built. We just have to fast forward the game, try to upgrade the houses to level 2 as much as we can so that we can start having a steady income of silver, and that should be more than enough. I do think, however, I'm gonna buy another ox to speed up the building process. This costs us a total of 20 silver, but we can make up for it later on. And I'm also gonna upgrade the hitching post to a small stable so that we can house this second ox. And I'm gonna set the priority to high. In the meanwhile, your competitor will start claiming other regions. If you zoom out to the map, you can see that he is claiming Nusloch, which is this one right here. When this bar gets filled, this territory will then become his and will have a shade of yellow, such as this one. You can dispute the claim and fight him for that, but we don't have an army big enough for that, so we're just gonna let him claim this territory. Another thing that I've forgotten to say is that eventually you will have this warning saying that the resources were stolen by bandits, or that a bandit camp was found or sighted. Usually this is happening on other regions of the map, so you don't particularly have to worry about that. Another type of message that you will eventually find is this thing: another ruler's army was sighted. If you click on it, you can see your competitors, Hildebolt's army, and these guys are usually just walking around and traveling. Hildebolt himself will not attack you personally until you declare war on him, or you claim a territory that is his. So you don't have to be afraid or worry about these huge armies that you can see. And you can see that he has 3 different militias. 2 of them are fully sized at 36, and he also has an archer militia of 28 units, so it would be impossible for us to fight him at the moment. And as I've mentioned, these guys will travel along the map, including your own region, but they will not attack you personally. So in this particular case, they are on a region that is not even ours, so there's no reason to worry about that. When you are growing your city, one of the things that you want to avoid is building your city too fast. You want to avoid growing your city up to a stage where the fuel and food production cannot keep up, or does not keep up with the amount of people living in the city. If I hover the supplies tooltip, you can see that food is lasting us for over 2 years, 2 entire years, so we're pretty much covered on food. Fuel is only lasting us 6 months, but this is a matter of adding more people to the Woodcutter's Lodge or building additional of these facilities. So we are in a very good position to expand our city and boost the population. So besides building new houses, I also want to do this thing, so expand the living space and increase the population of these particular houses when available. Again, this option is not available for every single house that you have. It depends on the layout, as I mentioned when I was explaining the plot sizes. Now, if we take a look at our logging camp, you can see that our lumberjacks have already completely chopped all of the trees in this area, and resources are pretty much getting scarce. Now, there are different options to deal with this. The first and foremost is to, perhaps the easiest one, is to build a secondary logging camp at another location. And the other option is to define or to limit the work area for the lumberjacks. So for example, if I click on this icon, I can set them or tell our lumberjacks to only work on a particular location, and I could choose an area that still has trees. And there's also another option, which is the one that I'm gonna use, which is the forester's hut. And I'm gonna build it right here. Villagers assigned to the forester's hut will basically plant trees in the nearby area. So you could have a logging camp, chopping the trees in a particular area, and then have a forester's hut to replenish the trees that were recently cut. Therefore, you would have an infinite, so to say, amount of trees in a particular location, without having to explore other areas of the map. I also think it's a good time for us to focus on other sources of food. At the moment we only have a supply of berries and meat, and we are gonna need a third option for food if we want to upgrade a building to level 3. There are different options here. I could focus on farming and produce bread, and this area is very fertile. You know, these colors let you know the fertility of the land, with green being the highest amount, and here you can select the different fertility levels for the different resource types. Another option that we have is by having your villagers start producing resources at their own backyard. And I think I'm gonna focus on vegetables. Now, it does cost a little bit of silver to set these farms up. As you can see, we only have 30, and to create a vegetable garden it costs 15. But that's fine, because this is money that you can recover later on. And I think at the moment I'm gonna have these 2 houses producing vegetables. While we focus on growing our population, we can also take advantage of this opportunity to start exploring the other resources that there are in the map, namely the stone, the iron, and also the clay. And this is because in order to upgrade to level 3 type buildings, I need to upgrade the wooden church to a small stone church that requires both stone and also clay. So I'm gonna build a stonecutter's camp right about here to take advantage of this stone. Now, as for this clay deposit, we cannot build a mine here because it will cause these wild animals to migrate. And I think this is a bug, because even though it's clearly outside the area of interference, you know, here it says a warning and here it does not, placing a mine here would cause the animals to migrate. And that's exactly what happened in a previous save of mine. So I think this is a bug. I don't think the clay deposits are supposed to spawn this close to the wild animals one. But nevertheless, I cannot use this deposit to import clay, because I prefer having the wild animals instead. So I think we'll have to find other way of getting the clay, namely by trading. Now, this is new. I had no idea this could happen. Deforestation killing berry bushes. So what I think I'm gonna do is move our lumber camp a bit further away from them and see if these things regrow. If not, we are gonna have a problem. I'm also gonna set my forester's hut to focus on this area in particular, so that it plants trees all around, and see if it is enough to help the berries grow and come back to life. This is me from the future, just to let you know that yes, moving your logging camp elsewhere and replenishing the trees in the bush location will make it so that berries will start growing again. This is what I was telling you guys about. You will have these armies strolling around your city like it was no big deal. Yeah, get out of here. Okay, so it seems that we are finally being attacked. The counter has gone down to 0. And if I click on the message, we can see our attackers. It seems to be 2 militias of 18 units each, and they are coming from this side. They are currently on this region, and they will have to travel all the way until they get to this location. So that gives us plenty of time to prepare and plan ahead for the attack. They will be coming from here. So I think I want to set my militias over here on this hill, and perhaps I can have the upper ground advantage. To set the militia, I'm just gonna click on the army panel, clicking the militia and then set on rally. And as you can see, I already have a militia of 20 spearmen already. But I think I'm gonna create an additional one instead of having a militia of 20 spearmen, I'm gonna have 2 militias of 10 spearmen each. Now I'm gonna rally each of them individually, and I'm gonna put them on this hill. So one over here, and the other one a bit behind. And the game kind of gives you a quick tutorial about formations and buffs, but we'll go over it as we play. And you can already see your units going at it. It's represented by these icons. And you can see them going towards their respective positions. Now, one thing that's particularly interesting is that the raid will always move towards the position of your militia. So for example, I set them over here, but if I set them on this location instead, you would see them running all the way until here. So they will not attack a particular building specifically if you have troops on the field. And they will always go after your troops. This gives you the advantage of deciding the battlefield. And as I've mentioned, I chose this hill because it gives us a slight advantage. Overing your militia panel, you can kind of see different buffs and debuffs. So when you're defending, you have that plus 90 bonus for defending your home region. But you also have some debuffs, so minus 2% caused by fatigue. That was what we spent in running all the way over here to the hill. And we also have a debuff for cohesion. Let's create a formation. So for the militia in front, I'm going to create a line. And I'm going to set this option, stand your ground. Soldiers will try to stand their ground and defense is doubled, but the attack frequency is halved. So this is going to be my defensive line. And as you can see, the cohesion debuff has completely disappeared and it's now a buff, because the troops are now organized. So let's talk about strategy. I am going to use this defense or this militia as a defense line to block the attacks from the raiders. And then I'm going to have this militia to come from the flanks and backstab them, so to speak. Let's see if this is something that we can do. So I move things a little bit. I'm having my line over here. This will be the defense unit. And I'm going to use these guys to rush downhill against these guys as soon as they engage. So I'm going to wait for the engage. Let's go a bit closer. Now let's go. And we have the high ground advantage. And there we go. We have successfully survived our first wave. Now, after the war is done, that will give you a brief period of peace, so you can disband your units and let them go on with their lives. Before wrapping this, there's one important thing to address, which is all the dead bodies that we have spread around the city. So one of the things that you gotta do is assign someone to the church, so that the city will start burying the bodies of your own soldiers. And then we also need to create the corpse pit, where you put the bodies of the raiders, so of your enemies. And I think I'm gonna put it maybe over here, right next to the regional road. That will be a message for everyone who's passing here. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this video. I hope it has been informative and helpful. Let me know if you want me to keep posting more of these videos and continuing the development of this particular city, and try to conquer the entire map. In the meanwhile, take care.